I started off as an environmental activist, and then I started writing about globalization, and that led me into a load of questions about human culture and what that was, and our relationship with nature and why that was broken. I was looking for a nature religion, really. That doesn't cut it for all sorts of reasons, partly because it's new and confected. But yeah, there was something missing, and it was God, I think. And I went looking for that then, because when you're a Western person and you come from a non-religious background, which sort of modern Western people tend to, certainly in Britain, you sort of go looking for God everywhere but Christianity, right? Because we're inoculated against it, right? Yeah. We've all got. Certainly, I grew up in schools with assemblies and preachings from vicars and all this stuff, and I had no interest in it at all. It was all rubbish, and I thought, it's got nothing to do with me. And it's fun to intellectually pick it apart and show that it's all nonsense and all that stuff. Precisely because it's our own heritage, we're completely inoculated against the Christian faith and what we think it is, right? What we think it is. And also partly because it was so tied up with power and that notion of what was wrong with that. I think, honestly, the whole of Western culture at the moment is in rebellion against itself.
Yeah, I agree.
What that really means is that it's in rebellion against Christianity. And the more I think about it, the more I think that what the whole culture war and the whole woke moment and the whole kind of the huge rejection, especially by the elites, of everything that their ancestors have ever been, is really a rejection of Christianity. And it's partly based on bad stuff that's happened, which is real, but it's something bigger than that. Actually, it's kind of an interesting cultural thing that is happening, that we're just almost inverting everything that we used to be. So yeah, you go looking everywhere else. So I looked in Zen Buddhism, and then I started looking in sort of neo-paganism, and I studied mythology, and I did sort of vision quests on mountains, and then I joined a Wiccan coven. That was good. I became a witch. Got myself a cloak. That was great. Bit of magic for a couple of years. And then literally things started happening to me which were weird and inexplicable. I started having dreams with Jesus in them and stuff. And then I felt like I was being literally physically taken out of this witchy environment I was in because I shouldn't be in it. And I kept getting emails from Christians, random emails from Christians who wanted to do writing courses or tell me something about something they'd read. And I thought, what the hell's going on here? And it felt like I was being pursued. There's this very famous, I think, 19th century poem called The Hound of Heaven, which is about being pursued by Christ. He just comes and gets you. And he says, right, enough of this nonsense. Come and let me sort you out. And so that felt like it was happening for a long time, and I was denying it. I didn't want to be a Christian. I didn't like Christians or the church or what I thought it was. But eventually I had to give in. One of the things that happened to me while I was in the process of accidentally becoming Christian was I just kept meeting Christians everywhere all the time. I mean, this started going on. I had a dream of Christ. Then some other things happened to me which were weird. And then despite trying to ignore them, I couldn't. So, and then suddenly there were Christians everywhere. They kept emailing me. They kept coming to me for writing lessons. They kept sending things to me on Facebook. And I was going, where did all these Christians come from? What the hell is this? And there was one guy from Africa who I haven't heard from since, and I'd never heard from before. And he sent me a Facebook message, and he said, I had a dream. God told me to contact you because he wants you to become a Christian. And I said, what? And he said, listen, he said, if you want to know God, you have to read the book he wrote. He said, it's not the Bible. That's written by people. He said, it's nature. That's the book.
He said that?
Yeah. He said, if you want to know God, read the book. This is the book. It's
plugged
nature.
Into you.
Yeah, because he'd read my work, and then he'd had a dream that God wanted me to be Christian, and then he emailed me out of the blue. Absolutely bizarre. And stuff like this was happening all over the place. And I thought, okay, against my better judgment, I'm going to have to shut up and listen at this point, which is a thing writers are very bad at. We're not.
You don't have to listen.
We don't like to listen. Exactly. But yeah, I thought that was a really interesting way to put it, because of course, if God creates the world and he sees that it's good 6 times, which is what we're told in Genesis, right? Then it's good. And interestingly, the only thing that God creates in Genesis that he doesn't see as good is humans. The only thing he doesn't see them, because we're not done yet. We haven't made it. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me that you would experience God, at least to some degree, through the creation itself. And the more I started to read about that, and the more I started to particularly explore Orthodox Christianity, which is where I ended up, Eastern Orthodox Christianity, the more I realized that there was a very old tradition here with a deep mystical heart to it, which I'd never come across, which isn't really something you are going to find in the Church of England. And it's real, and it's still alive. And connects the kind of transcendence of God with the immanence of God, and the earth with creation, and the creation with creator, and all sorts of things that I hadn't known I was looking for. And yeah, it was a very strange and interesting experience that happened over the last few years, and it's really confirmed something for me. I suppose you can have ideas, but you have to have them confirmed intuitively, or spiritually. And it was very obvious to me that spiritual void you talked about is the essence of what's going on. It's the essence of what's going wrong, I think, for us, certainly as a culture in the West. I don't think there's ever been a culture on Earth that I'm aware of, from the smallest tribe to the biggest civilization, that has ever not had some kind of spiritual core, some kind of structure that is designed to speak the name of God in whatever language they speak it in, except ours. We're the only one that's done that, and really very, very recently, to create this kind of post-Enlightenment consumer culture in which kind of economics and reason replaced that deep spiritual intuition we had, and to imagine that that's going to fill the void is turning out to be wrong. And the more you start to pull on threads, you can see that we're at a lot of cliff edges, which is what led me to start the Dark Mountain Project 10 years ago. In the last 10 years, a lot of what we were writing about then has been, I think, just become almost mainstream, in terms of the sense that a lot of things, from the climate situation to the ecological situation more broadly, to our kind of cultural and economic fabric, is all fraying very dangerously, and we're all kind of standing on this trampoline waiting to see if we're going to fall through it, which we are at some point. And so I suppose I've been pulling on a lot of threads over the last year or so, trying to work out what the kind of, if there is a root cause of this in our cultural fabric, what is it? What's wrong with our way of life? I mean, I suppose that's the question I've always been asking, what is wrong with the way we're living that has brought us to this point? How could we get to the point where we could change the climate of a whole planet and kick off a mass extinction event and have a kind of global economy of such kind of technological complexity and authoritarianism increasingly? And how could we have built this great machine, as I tend to call it these days, that is very clearly, it seems to me, controlling us rather than the other way around at the moment? What brought us to that point? And it's not as if there's an easy answer, or as if I can work it out in any way, but for my own kind of satisfaction, I'm just trying to work that out at the moment, because the world at the moment is just incredibly confusing. A lot of people say that to me, and I think you find the world's always been incredibly confusing, but in a way we're bombarded with information from every source at the moment. We've got culture wars and political battles and endless social media feeds and goodness knows how much information and just kind of bubbles of this, that, and the other hitting us. It's almost impossible to work out what the hell's going on anywhere, actually, and to kind of wade through the swamp of it all. And especially when things are moving as fast as they are at the moment with COVID and the responses to it, it's almost impossible to stay sane some days, I find. I've had a lot of people say that to me, how do you just keep your head above water?
Yeah.
And for me, when I look back, I've always had a religious sensibility. It's just never found a home. Mm-hmm. So that's the way I look at it now. And I was sort of stumbling around trying to find a home for this. Not a home in the sense that I would have everything explained to me, because Christianity doesn't explain everything. It's still, right. You're still right. living in the world, but just a sense of, as John Moriarty, the Irish philosopher, put it, I was looking for a prayer that was big enough to hold me. It's a really good way of putting it. It's like, what story could possibly encompass what the hell is going on here?
Yeah,
and to my great surprise, it turned out to be.
This is it. I'm a Dostoevsky guy, and he says, "Yeah, I know, I get it. I know. It sounds weird. There was a God. He was resurrected. It was but just trust me, it's the most beautiful story. So I'm sticking with the beauty. It holds me." It is the thing that animates me. You won't tell me a better story, so I may be wrong, but you don't understand. This is how my life must go.
But it's interestingly enough, I've had readers coming to me quite angrily and saying, "I can't believe you've become a Christian. This is disgusting. I'm never reading you again." And I particularly had that from a few Americans who just said, "Don't you understand what Christianity is? A really poisonous, damaging religion."
I see.
And I've had conversations with some of them, and almost to a man or a woman, they've been brought up in these really very right-wing evangelical households, and they've had this kind of brutal version of Christianity shoved at them, and that's their experience of it, right? Sure. So they hear someone like me becoming a Christian, and they go, "Oh, right, you've become one of those people." Those, I don't know much about American evangelicalism or anything. I don't want to I don't want to generalize, but there's obviously, you know, there is that highly political, highly judgmental form of the religion, which is and it's hardly just an American phenomenon either. You know, I mean, we probably invented it, to be fair. Prayer's at the heart of it. I didn't even know what praying was before I became a Christian, but praying is really just talking to God. And the more you do that, the more, in some inexplicable way, it starts to deepen in you. And fundamentally, something has changed inside me since I became a Christian, and I couldn't put my finger on that. But people around me have noticed it as well, which is interesting to me. So it's manifesting in some way in my life. I certainly feel a much greater sense of peace than I ever had before. The sense making is a lot more sensible now. And it's not because I've mindlessly accepted a story. It's because the story's given me a structure to experience something that I continue to experience. I mean, it's a continual path of deepening Christianity. It's like any path. Buddhism would be like that as well. You know, the practice is what deepens it for you. You can say, oh, sure, I believe in God, I'll get baptized and go to church. That's okay, but that's the beginning of a process, the process of kind of prayer. And in Orthodox, you say fasting and prayer rules and all of these things, all the structures that exist and the do's and the don'ts exist for the purpose of deepening the relationship with God, which happens internally. Like Christ says, the kingdom of God is within you. You know, it's not in the sky with the birds, it's in you. And he specifically says that to his disciples. That's where you experience it. So I think the test is, if you become a Christian or follow any traditional faith and you do it properly and you follow the rules, you'll find that the rules will deepen something that's happening inside you.